and so the oxygen kind of bonds to the fuel molecules and increases and helps with the octane level. The hydrogen actually now is still separate. As it goes into the piston, it's still separate, but the hydrogen has what's called a high sonic flash point, and it's actually the igniting gas. And what it does, it burns so hot, so fast, that in a matter of milliseconds, it vaporizes everything in the piston. So just as some technical info, the gasoline normally burns at 460 degrees Fahrenheit, and hydrogen burns at 1160, give or take. So gas burns slower, and that's why about 30 to 50% of it comes out your exhaust pipe unburned. And hydrogen helps basically burn everything.
I see. Okay, so Ari, if I'm getting 20 miles to the gallon now with gasoline,
right,
what does this do for me?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, it's kind of a loaded question. You know, it really depends on the vehicle. There's so many different vehicles out there nowadays, George, and it really does vary. And the funny thing about that, too, and I will answer your question, but I kind of have to preface it, is that there are various levels, and I think Frank will back me up on this, too. By the way, Frank, it's good to meet you. I've never actually spoken with you before, so I just want to let everyone know that I actually don't know Frank, and it's cool that he's out there installing the systems that we teach people how to make all day.
Oh, you guys are this big, you don't even know each other yet, huh?
Yeah, there you go, right? So, I mean,
we're on the same team.
Yeah, we are, definitely. But back to what I was saying is, the core of the Water4Gas hydrogen on-demand system is what we call the HHO generator, or also known as the electrolyzer. So one of those units made out of household, not household, but things that you can buy basically at the hardware store and at the auto parts store, it's basically a 1-quart jar, and you can make it out of anything. We've been using just simple mason jars to hold the water in. So if you can imagine, you have 1 quart of water being stored under your hood.
Okay.
Right now, that 1 quart of water is producing approximately, well, I don't know how to measure it, but however much amount of hydrogen is being produced by that 1 jar. On a typical, let's say, 4-cylinder engine, you'd probably see, give or take, a 20% to maybe 50% increase in fuel economy with that 1 jar. That's what I've seen, and from the people that I've walked through or the systems I've personally installed. Now that varies, of course, depending on, like Frank was talking. I'm sorry, Fred. On the newer cars, you're going to have the electronic fuel injection, right? And believe it or not, and I think you might even back me up on this, that the newer vehicles they have these ECUs. It's called onboard diagnostic. They have these computers that basically govern every function of the engine.
Yeah, they're a lot more complicated than what they used to be.
Yeah, it seems like every few years they reprogram and they have a new technology that comes out, or an updated technology, just like your software on your home PC.
Sure.
And the EPA wants to have it where they can control pretty much all the emissions and everything. And nowadays it's very hard to work on these newer cars and be able to tweak them without having interference from the computer. So if I were to go install one simple electrolyzer on, like, let's say a 2008 Honda Accord, you might see an immediate increase, and it might go right back down to your original mileage, because that onboard computer will actually kick in and say, wait a minute,
and compensate for it.
It will compensate. So in other words, your car might even register a lean mixture, because it's now the emissions coming out of the exhaust are cleaner than they were before. But the car's been programmed at the factory to have dirty emissions.
Now, for older cars that don't have computers, not a problem.
Not a problem. I talk to people all day long that have, carbureted vehicles or even fuel-injected vehicles prior to the mid-'90s, when they started implementing
computers,
the second version of this computer. And you get, on some of these cars, you get an immediate 100% increase in fuel economy, 50%. It really does vary.
Well, with the price of gasoline hovering at $4 a gallon, I mean, that could be a significant savings for some people.
Right. And if you're talking about on a larger application, for example, the gentleman who's spearheading the diesel, like full-size, big rig trucks and whatnot.
Right.
His name is Carter Blankenship, and he was the one who spearheaded, why don't I take this to the truckers? So we started implementing that, and he started off with I forgot what kind of truck it was, but it had like a big cat motor, one of these huge, 10-liter engines or 8-liter engines or whatever it was. And he actually wound up going from somewhere around 5.5 miles per gallon, which is not very good even for a big truck, to about 7 or so. And you go, well, that doesn't seem that much of an increase. But when you look at the pocketbook at the end of the week, he was saving between $300 and $400 a week on diesel fuel.
Well, that adds up. It really does. I want to get your take, Ari, and you, Fred, on just what's happening now to the price of oil and gasoline. I mean, oil today hit $124 a barrel.
Yeah.
I'm a believer that this planet makes oil itself. It's abiotic. That's not the question. What is happening? Why is it up so high?
Oh, man.
You just opened a can of worms.
Yeah,
I know it. Let's look at these worms.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's kind of like if you go back to the oil embargo, in the early 1970s, 1973.
Yep.
We had apparently there was fighting in the Middle East. They didn't want the U.S. to take their oil anymore. We didn't agree with some of the foreign policies. Blah blah blah. I don't know specifically why today. I mean, a lot of people want to blame it on Bush. Other people want to blame, whatever. To me, it all boils down to follow the buck. Someone's making money off of it.
Huge money.
Huge money. And, I mean, there's some documentaries out there that I recommend and some books that people read. And in our books, by the way, let me just tell you real quickly what our company really does, because Fred does the installations. But what we do at Water4Gas is we want to educate people. And so what we do is we sell the online books that teach you about this technology. And in the books, they recommend, go read this, go read that, and start opening your mind. One of the things that I recommend is there's a documentary that I watched not too long ago, and it's called Who Killed the Electric Car?
Oh, yeah.
And really good documentary. And since you brought up the question about oil prices, I mean, and I think Fred mentioned this earlier, is like there was proof that Exxon bought out the plans for that electric car from GM, and so obviously someone is making money off of our ignorance in terms of the consumer. In terms of what drives up the oil prices, I really couldn't say.
Do you think today, right now, if we wanted a fully electric car or a fully hydrogen car, we could do it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Not even a question.
It's been done. It's been done many times.
Yeah. There's one out there in France. Isn't there one in France that is running on compressed air?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That technology's been available for almost 60 years.
Yeah, BMW has a fully hydrogen car. They've had it for almost 30 years. A full hydrogen car. BMW has it. The only problem is that, like Frank was saying, or Fred was saying, the technology is so advanced and it's so expensive. Because you're talking about hydrogen burns like so hot, right? To have a car that runs 100% on hydrogen, you have to have all the metals, the alloys, the compression, and besides that, you're storing vast amounts.
Well, you're right. It might have to be a ceramic car. We're going to come right back. I've got some more questions for both of you. In the next hour, I'll keep you two for questions before we float into our floating format for open lines in the last hour on Coast to Coast AM.